Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Uplevel Your Life with Mindy. I am your host, Mindy Duff, and I have a guest with me today. I'm going to be chatting with Laura Ora, and she is a speaker, a coach, and author, and we're going to be talking about some of my favorite stuff. In fact, Laura, I've got some questions on here that, I'm not going to say that they're for personal benefit, but they're maybe for personal benefit. We're going to
That's
be talking
okay.
about leveling up and achieving goals and how to basically just live your best life, which is what this podcast is all about. So before we get into all that, Laura, thank you so much for being here. And I'm just glad you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So can you, in your own words, tell us just a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I've been a business owner for the last 16 and a half years. I started off my journey as a graphic designer. I ran a branding agency for 16 years. And through growing and expanding that business, I found a real love and passion for the minds behind the entrepreneurs that I was working with. And so I started to interview them and just talk about the good and the bad and the ugly and what keeps you up at night and what makes you really excited and what are you working towards. And it's just fascinating to learn about people, right? Like people were all so similar yet so different at the same time. And my love and my passion for helping people to get out of their own way began to supersede my passion for branding. So I sold my first business just a couple of months ago. And I have stepped full time now into my role as a speaker, coach, and author. And so I'm primarily working with women all around the globe to help rediscover who they really are, what it is that they actually want, to shift the mind junk that happens that talks themselves out of it, and to really step into and take those risks and do things that make them feel alive, right? We talk ourselves out of things that we really want before we even get started. And that's where I love to interject and help to reroute that so that you can actually start to feel the way that you want to feel. And even first, just dissecting what does that even mean for you in the first place.
Oh, yeah. I think that this is really, really important work that you're doing because I like what you say about we talk ourselves out of it before we even get into it. That's that's like everyone that I know, basically. Self
Yes.
included, all the time doing those things. And that's why, this is I guess I'm not wasn't intending on this, but here's a plug for working with a coach, right? I think that when you're working with somebody, and maybe, if you don't have the money for a coach, find that really, really honest, trusted friend too, because we are so good at talking ourselves out of things and getting in our own way that sometimes you need that sort of more impartial third party to step in and be like, hey, what are you
Yes.
doing? How about this? Have you thought about this perspective? Just to kind of get out of our heads a little bit. So I think that's amazing work that you're doing and really, really important.
Thanks. I just love it, right? Like when I get to work with women, and I work with them in all different capacities, right? Because budgets and time are real things that we need to take into consideration. And I find that one of the big things that they're looking for is that accountability, right?
Yeah.
Is that, oh, I know that Laura's got a checkpoint, right? Like it helps you to stay focused, it helps you to keep that momentum going. And then if you're surrounded by other like-minded women and you're supporting and growing one another, like magic can happen in very short periods of time. Making growth, making strides, moving forward doesn't always have to be a huge monumental shift. Sometimes it is, but more often than not, it's in the tiny shifts that add up to have really big impact in your world. And celebrating that and having the accountability built in and just knowing that there's someone else that believes in you, right? Especially if you're at the beginning or maybe even more importantly in the middle of a transition, it's so powerful to know that there is somebody that has your back, because not everybody has that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. In fact, actually, just a few days ago, I became aware that, there's some goals that I'm working on and I'm not doing a very great job of it, to be honest, for no reason other than, it's my own stuff. It's not hard. It's not complicated. I'm not doing it. So there's obviously, I need to do a little work on why am I not doing it? But part of that for me was finding an accountability partner. So I reached out to some friends and I was like, all right, listen, I don't need to take up a whole bunch of your time. In fact, we agreed that like sometimes we might just do voice memos, but we have a set check-in day. We're going to try Friday mornings. We're just going to check in and be like, hey, this is what my progress on my goal. I did it or I didn't do it. And it's not to be judged and it's not to be coached or encouraged or anything. It's just, I have to tell these people whether I did it or not.
Yes. Yes.
And just knowing that for me, and I think for a lot of people, is enough sometimes to propel you forward. But yeah, when you have that coach or somebody that is like, you know that you have to talk to them and tell them. My word for the year, Laura, I don't know if you've done a word of the year ever, but my
Yes.
word for the year is consistency. And that's kind of
Mm.
along with that. Like, it's like you say, it's not the big things always. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's like, what are you doing every day? These little small steps to kind of build your life, so to speak. So, we're talking a little bit about this, but I'm wondering about your perspective on mindset. And is mindset the most important thing when it comes to leveling up, do you think?
Hmm. Well, I'll tell you this because I think that you know it could be an opinionated question. I'll tell you this though. Your the conversations that you have with yourself are hands down the loudest voices that you will ever hear. And so your mindset is either going to be the thing that propels you forward, pushes you forward, opens up new opportunities, or it's going to be the thing that stops you, the thing that talks yourself out of it, the thing that puts it off till tomorrow, the thing that doesn't want to have the conversation, the the belief that I can't do this and I won't do this and I'm too far behind, right? So is it the most important thing? I think it's part of a bag of wonderful tools that need to be considered, but I would argue that it's pretty damn far up the list. Because if you're just full of this just self-doubt and talking yourself down and procrastinating and resisting and all this other stuff, it's really hard to level up anything, right? Whether it's a business, your health, your finances, your relationships, right? Your desire to travel, whatever, right? Like you can talk yourself out of something very, very quickly, but you can also lean into the possibility just as easily if you allow yourself. So I think it's pretty damn important if you ask me.
I was had a feeling that you were going to say it was important. So now here's a question that I'm really curious for the answer to. Okay. What would you say to someone who's aware that they keep repeating the same patterns but doesn't know how to stop?
Oh,
And while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to say, I mean, this is me. I actually, even just yesterday, was getting really frustrated, kind of throwing it out to the universe like, okay, I get it. Like, I need to learn this lesson, but clearly I'm not. Like, I'm not, like, I can see that it's something that's coming up again and again. And okay, but like, what? I'm not getting it. So, how do you work through that so that you can learn the lesson and move on, so to speak?
yeah. So can you ask me that question one more time just so it's top of
Okay,
mind?
the actual question is what would you say to someone who's aware they keep repeating the same patterns but doesn't know how to stop?
Got it. So a couple of things here. First, these are something we call habit loops. So whatever it is that you're doing or not doing is familiar. It's what you know how to do. And I'm not making it right or wrong, it just is, right? And so there's a perceived safety in doing the thing that you know that is most familiar to you. So I like to look at this as this very much involves your subconscious mind, by the way, where you're not consciously thinking, it's just kind of running on autopilot. It's a wild west back there. And I when you're trying to do something, especially if you're trying to make a positive change, but you just can't seem to get out of the rut of like getting past things to get to it, think of your subconscious mind like a dirt road. Okay. So this dirt road has been there for hundreds of years, let's say, right? And so much that anytime a car or truck that turns down it, the grooves in the dirt road are so clearly defined that your vehicle just clicks into place and you just follow that path, right? That's the habit loop. That's the cycle. That's literally what's happening in your brain. It's a groove that you know how to handle and that it's kind of already chosen for you because of repetitious habits, patterns, beliefs, uh, the way that you've done things. And so to get out of that groove, you have to do something different. So if we're using the same analogy, it's like when you turn down that road, instead of following that path, you turn your wheel to the right just a little bit. And you're going to be met with resistance and tension, and it's bumpy and it doesn't feel quite right, and it's awkward, and like, oh, it would be easier, let me just follow the thing. That's the change. And so if you find yourself in that cycle, it's because you're either following the path, or now you've chosen to turn the wheel to the right just a little bit to try something new to get a new outcome. And it's that kind of clunky period in between where a lot of people get discouraged and frustrated and like, this isn't working. And, I want this to happen faster. And like, you literally have to give it the time to create the new path. Eventually, you have a new path, and you don't have to think about it as much. You don't have to do as many things to shift or change it. You're not consciously thinking about turning the wheel. You just are, because now it's your new normal. And that old dirt road starts to fill in, and it's not as prominent anymore. So it's in that recognition that like, hey, I'm doing the same thing. I want something different. That middle ground is leaning into the shift, right? It's leaning into that unknown territory. It's not just because it feels off doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's new. It's unfamiliar. It's not the way that you have been trained or have been living by. So you have to give yourself that time, truly. And I know people hate that, but like, it's the honest truth. You have to show up and turn the wheel to the right every single day until it becomes your new normal. And then you break the habit.
So I know that there's not an answer to this like directly. Like I want you to give me like a finite number, but like how long?
Well, Mindy, how much does a house cost?
Right.
It's one of those situations. I mean, it depends on how deep that groove is, right?
Yeah.
Like if you've been, I don't know, if you've been starting your morning the same way every day for the last 25 years, it's probably going to take you a hot minute to shift that morning routine, right? Whereas if you
Yeah.
just started doing something 4 months ago, it might not take you as long. It also depends on emotional attachment. It depends on past experiences. There's just a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but you'll know. That's what I want you to know. Like, I really encourage my clients to learn and begin to trust themselves, because that's where so much of your power is in trusting yourself and knowing that just because I'm not where I want to be yet doesn't mean I'm failing. Just because this feels awkward doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? I can trust that I'm making positive changes. I may not physically see it yet, but if I start to feel it just a little bit, then you can start to grab onto that. So there's definitely no, if I had a magic wand and a perfect recipe, I would be a gajillionaire. So stay tuned. If I figure it out, you'll be the first to know.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you kind of answered my other question I was thinking there about how I think there's this you hit a point when you're making a change where it's uncomfortable, and so maybe at first you're like, okay, no, I heard him talking on the podcast. This is good. I'm supposed to feel uncomfortable. I'm making changes. But then you stay in that for a while, and it's so long that you think, okay, this has been a long time of uncomfortable. Is this really the right thing? Or am I just,
Mm.
trying to open a door that's locked or beating my head against the wall for really no quote unquote reason? But I think what you say there is trusting yourself to know. I mean, I think at that point is where you just maybe need to take, I'd take days probably, or weeks, depending on the person, to just go within and listen and keep asking, is this still the path that I want to be on? Because yeah, it can be, I think, easy to go, okay, been doing this a while. I know she said it was going to take time, but holy cats,
You're like,
is
but
this uncomfortable?
yeah, that's the perfect question, and the power of pausing, right? Like knowing that if you're working towards something and shifting something doesn't mean that you have to do it every day. I think sometimes we get change fatigue,
Yeah.
right? Like when we're just constantly trying to change something, it's like, how about we just let it fucking simmer for a second, right? Can we just be right
Yeah.
now and check in with yourself? Is this what I still want? How am I feeling about this? Am I still excited about the outcome of what I'm working towards? Does this still feel aligned in my body? Right? And if you even get like a whisper, like a little tiny hint that says no, I need you to trust that. It's okay to change your mind. Women don't hear that enough. It's okay to change your mind. I built a
Yeah.
branding agency for 16 years. On paper, it looked stupid to sell it. Like, why would you do that? Because my body said I was done. You've got to trust yourself, and it's okay to change your mind. I thought I would have that branding agency till the day I died, right? Like, I remember starting it and I was like, this is my thing. This is what I'll forever do. Like, I will take this all the way. I'll be 9 years old making people's logos. And I just started to fall out of love with it. I was finished, right? Like, I didn't quit. I was just finished. I achieved all that I wanted to do, and there was this new chapter calling me. So, whether it's a yes or it's a no, trust that. And your intuition, trusting yourself, doesn't have to be loud and proud and flashing in your face. More often than not, it starts with that little tiny nudge where you're like, no, that's ridiculous. Why would I do that? Why would I think that? That's silly. Like, no, that's not for me. That's your intuition's first way of trying to get your attention. And if something is really truly meant for you, it will get louder. It'll talk to you. It'll get in front of your face. It'll nudge you with the elbow. And if you don't listen, ultimately, it will punch you in the face. And that's when you end up in those situations where like you have no choice but to move. And so trusting yourself really is a muscle that you build over time. And when you're in those, solitude moments and you're like, is this what I still really want? Trust whatever comes up. And it's okay to pivot accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Do you have any favorite ways of tapping into your intuition? That's a topic that's been shared many times on this podcast, but I think everybody has a different bit to bring to the table. So I'm just curious if you have some of your personal favorites or ways that have helped some of your clients.
Yeah. So I think it's cool because we're all so unique. And if you're trying to do something to hear and to trust yourself and to tap in and it's not working, it just might not be your thing. So give yourself grace and permission to, you know, try stuff to see what actually works. So for me, I know being outside is huge and it's so simple. That's the other thing. Like tapping into yourself is actually quite simple. You don't need this whole ass routine. Sitting outside, like yesterday morning, I just had this nudge to go sit outside to drink my coffee. It's one of my favorite things. Slow mornings, quiet mornings. I've really grown to love and appreciate. So I had this nudge. It was like, don't go upstairs with the coffee today. Go outside. So I grabbed my coffee. I went out back. It was like this warm and cool morning. Like the air was cool, but the sun was warm. It almost felt like sitting on the beach, but in rural Pennsylvania. And I sat out there. I don't even know how long. I'm not a big timer type of person, but I sat out there till I was finished, right? And I just felt so rejuvenated. I was having some anxiety prior to that. I was just feeling a little bit up in my head, like I was just feeling kind of gunky. And when I came back in, I was like, oh, I have just like a little bit of sun kiss on my skin, and I feel reconnected with myself, and it just grounded me back down. So grounding, being outside, is definitely one of my big ones. Um, Tapping into myself also comes a lot with music, I have found, and driving. Ironically, I can't. I'm not distracted when I'm driving. I'm focused on driving, and inevitably, my brain likes to be like, "Great, you're not doing anything. I have a lot of ideas for you." So I've learned how to safely document those through just voice messaging on my own phone, so that I can remember those things for later. And then I have my own form of meditation. Like again, it's one of those things like, do you have to sit a certain way and have your hands a certain way and do it a certain amount of time and quiet your mind? That probably works for a lot of people. I'm certain that it does. That doesn't work for me. My brain has a constant dialogue of information going on. So for me, it's really about connecting with the feeling that I am hungry for or I'm achieving, like striving for. So I'm really good about visualization and I'm really good about tapping into the emotion and the feeling. So like when I'm working towards something, I I focus on feeling what it feels like to already be in that. And sometimes I get emotional and sometimes I get chills and sometimes I get really stupid excited and there's just all different ways that my body lights up to let me know like, hey, we've connected with that and it's real and it's a matter of time and it's not my job to dictate that timeline.
Oh, I love those tips. And I love that you shared some things that are a little bit different and not necessarily like if you Google like how to
Yeah.
tap into your intuition, like they're probably not going to say go outside with your coffee and just sit till you're done. Like
Yeah.
it's you might find it somewhere, but that's not going to be on all the top 10 lists. But that doesn't mean that that's not super valuable. So I'm glad that you shared that. I'm sure that there's somebody else out there listening to this today that's going to go, oh, I always thought I had to do this and it never worked. And
Well, and
yeah.
that's the thing. Like, we all Google, right? Like we're all looking up stuff and you think that you have to do things a certain way. And I think that there's some value in trying that, right? Because
Hmm.
obviously they're in lists for a reason. They do work for a lot of people. But like I said earlier, if it's not feeling right to you, tweak it, adjust
Yeah.
it, make it whatever works for you. Because one, not only are you going to connect further, but two, you're going to sustain it. Like it will stick around. If you've been trying to do something that's not been working, maybe it's just not the right way for you. Maybe you need your own unique way of doing things, right? Like for
Yeah.
me, like dancing around like a fool is so therapeutic to me. It releases energy, it gets my endorphins going, like it helps me get pumped up. And I just dance like an idiot for like 10 minutes. I get a little bit of a workout in and I'm so connected. Like that's not textbook anything. That works for me because my body is all lit up and my inner child is like, "Yay, we get to have fun right now." Right? So let whatever it is that you're trying to do be for you. Like do it your own way. That's what's going to stick around.
I love that. I love that because, like you say, when you're doing it your own way, you're more likely to keep doing it, which is kind of the whole idea here. Which brings me to another question. So, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay motivated? And what are some of your favorite tips just for staying motivated? Because even on things where, you set a goal, it's the right thing, everything in your body says, yes, this is a good idea. And yet, sometimes I just don't feel like it today.
Yeah. So I think that first I want to start this off by saying sometimes it's okay just to not be motivated.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to push yourself through if you're just having a day and you have the flexibility. Eh, Like there are some days I wake up and I got nothing. Right? Like I love to speak. I show up on video every single day just about writing pours out of me and there are some days where it's just like, not today, Laura. We're not doing that. And so it's okay to have an introvert day and to not push yourself to be motivated. Again, another topic that I don't think we talk enough about, so I feel super compelled to talk about that you don't have to be motivated all the time. So I just want to set that preface. But I also know kind of when that time is up, and you have to know that for yourself, right? Like if I get into a place where I start like wallowing or I'm losing interest in things, I'm not doing the work that I know really helps and supports, like I'm like, okay, Laura, like we need to do a little bit of a recheck. um One of the best ways that I have found that motivates me is goodness in. So what I mean by that is like a good audiobook, like to sit and read a book. While I think that's lovely sometimes, it's just not always how my brain operates. And so putting on an audiobook while I'm getting ready in the morning, right? It feeds good information. It's motivating to me. I'm loving always reading about self-development and self-support and growth and tapping in and energies and stuff like that. That's just where I shine. And so listening to that stuff while I'm getting ready has been very powerful for me because it like resets my energy to be like, okay, I got this, right? I remember who I am. Um, what else motivates me? New experiences. So I'm a Sagittarius, which for anybody listening that may or may not know, I thrive on adventure and trying new things and seeing new things. So what motivates me is like trying a new restaurant or going to a town that's an hour away that we wouldn't typically go to, or finding new little shops and going in and seeing what they have. Like adventure, new little adventures for me. Like I love a good weekend trip. It's so nice because you don't have to plan your whole life to get away for a week, and then you don't have to recoup for a whole week coming back from it. Like it's just this little like fuel, and that really motivates me because it reminds me how big this world is and how many different things and people are out there. And just being, I think another thing that motivates me is like being in the presence of people doing what they're supposed to do. That motivates the shit out of me. like like seeing a show on Broadway, literally I weep. Like I actually weep because it's so overwhelmingly beautiful to be in the presence of people doing what they're called to do. Their passion just exudes from them. Like so any like concerts, Broadway, I went to see a friend who had a book launch the other day. Like I just feel this overwhelming joy of being in the presence of people doing the things that they love the most. So those are a few of my motivators.
Oh, I like those, all of those. And I would agree with most of them, but again, I'm really glad that you're sharing them because what motivates one person is not what motivates the next. It's funny that you're talking about being a Sagittarius and like adventure and go and do things. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I am a Taurus. I don't move. Like, like I stay in the same, I need routine and predictability
Yep.
and yeah, which is so funny. But I also enjoy a good weekend trip. So I'm with you on that one. But as you were talking, it made me just think that, I think that all of us probably know what motivates us. It's just, but we don't think about it very often. I mean, how often does somebody having coffee with you say, hey, so what motivates you? Like, whoa, where'd that question come from? Like, we don't think about it. It's not like a common thing. But I would encourage everybody that's listening to think about it. Like, I mean, Laura shared some things. I just shared some things that are different for me. I mean, what about whoever's listening right now? What motivates you? Bring it to top of mind or write it down on a piece of paper, whatever you need to do so that when you need that motivation, you got it. You know where to go because everybody's just so different. Now, I know that sometimes when we're working on a goal, part of the issue is like the get going. So okay, we've got our motivation, we're ready to get going. And we know that we're creating new patterns and habits and it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But what about when we just start to not believe in ourselves anymore? What about when that creeps in? When you go, okay, I know it's supposed to be uncomfortable and I'm okay with that. And I'm doing all these things to keep me motivated, but something deep inside me just says, it's not for you. You can't do this. I've seen other people do it, but there's a little voice inside me that says, not you though. What are your favorite tips for boosting that self-belief?
Yeah. So a handful of things come running to the front. So first, having really good people that you can lean on and talk to is underrated, grossly underrated. Because sometimes a quick conversation is enough to just like turn the whole car around and get you back on track, right? Like, so whether that's a coach, a mentor, a good friend, a group that you're a part of, like find your people, and it doesn't have to be huge. It can be one or two people that you can just say, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this. What do you think? Do you have 10 minutes we can hash this out? That's everything. Sometimes though we have to go at it alone too, right? We can't always rely on everyone else to help us get back on our path. We have to know how to do that for ourselves. So one of my favorite little tricks is, especially when I'm getting like in that little like blah kind of place, is you have to catch the thought, right? Which I have a process I can share with you in a second if you'd like. You have to catch the thought, and then a statement that you can say to yourself, very simple, is same or better. Do I want the same or better? And sometimes that's enough to just like, ooh, jar you forward just a hair to start that momentum going. So an example of this, I really enjoy walking like around my neighborhood. It's just That feels good to me. It's good energy movement. I like being outside. But sometimes I just don't feel like walking. But I know it helps me, and I know I've never regretted taking a walk. And so I'll be sitting on the couch like slumped over, and I'm like, Laura, you want the same or better? And I'm like, shit. I want better. I want to feel better. So I put on my shoes, I go outside, and I'm like, thank goodness I went out, because I got an idea while I was walking and my anxiety went down and I feel good and I'm laughing again, right? Like all these great things happen. So that's a nice little phrase to catch yourself in the moment, same or better. And it's often enough to like just like nudge you a little bit in one direction or another. The other thing is actually my foundational method that I teach, called the power back process. And this is a very simple acronym that helps you to catch your thoughts in the moment and then to reframe them so that you don't get caught in your own way. Would it be helpful if I shared that?
Absolutely.
Cool. So the power back process is an acronym. It's aura. Funny. Surprise. AURA. That was not intentional, by the way. It just kind of worked that way. And I'm like, well, the stars aligned. So the A in the process, this is the very first part, is awareness. You must get consciously aware of your thoughts and your feelings. If you don't notice them, if you don't catch them, it's almost impossible to change them. So you have to notice, what am I saying to myself? What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body? And this process, by the way, you can do silently in like a couple of minutes with yourself, sometimes a few seconds. So you don't need to go buy anything. You don't have to like go meditate in a room. Like you can literally just do this standing in the grocery line. So A is awareness, catching the thoughts. The next part is you, which is to unpack it. Where is this coming from? This is a space of curiosity. So normally what we want to do is immediately go into beating ourselves up for thinking something shitty, right? So what I'm suggesting with this is instead look at it through the lens of curiosity. This part of the process is much like talking to an inner child, right? Like if you were talking to a child and they were experiencing a big emotion or a big thought, how would you communicate with them? How are you feeling? Where is this coming from? Tell me more about it, right? It really starts to soften the spiky edges of what was just happening in your head, and it helps you to start to reconnect with yourself. Then you can move into R, which is to reframe it. Reframing it is about tapping into your higher self. Okay, so we've acknowledged and loved on our younger self. Now we're tapping into our higher self. This is where your innate knowing is. We talked about trusting yourself earlier. The trust, this is what you know. If you take away all that mind gunk for a second, this is what you know to be true or possible. I know I'm capable of this. I figured this out before. I can figure this out too. All I have to do is this one next thing. I don't have to control the timeline, right? We're starting to take that initial thought or feeling and starting to give it like an actual context for our real life. And then you can move into A, which is to take aligned action. This is where you're choosing to consciously move forward with what you know to be true instead of believing the old shit that would usually talk yourself out of it. So this is where you're literally taking the action forward to make that change. This is the turn of the wheel of the car that we talked about earlier. And this action could be the smallest of things, right? It might be making the phone call. It might be closing an account. It might be sending an email. It might be cleaning out one drawer, right? Like it can literally be one small thing. And that process over and over again helps to get you to where you actually want to be. So anytime you start getting like in that, I call it mind fuckery. That's one of my signature classes that I teach. When you start really feeling that and you get all up in your head, if you walk through that process, I promise you, you will start to see and feel change. It is inevitable.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that it's just 4 kind of simple steps, starting with awareness. We talk about awareness a lot on this podcast. Everybody hates it, but like you're right. You have to have it. Like
You
if you're
can't,
not,
I would love to see somebody argue with me about that you can make change without it. Like,
yeah.
I'm ready. I've got my notebook.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. But I like that this seems kind of empowering because when we talk about having the awareness and even like your second step of unpacking it, that's, I mean, it's obviously it's very important, but I think a lot of times we kind of stop there and it doesn't always feel empowered. It can a little, when you're like, okay, oh wow, what am I feeling right now? I'm actually feeling really anxious and worried. And why? Well, because XYZ happened. Of course I'm anxious and worried. But then we stop and then you just are aware that you feel anxious and worried, right? Like
Yes.
that's not, you need to go that extra step to, to actually help yourself not only feel better, but to do something about it and to do something about it in the direction that you want to see your life going. And so I think that's a really, really powerful and easy to, well, kind of easy,
Well,
easier said than done, but easy
it's
steps to follow.
it is easy. That does not immediately mean that it's simple,
Right.
or vice
Yeah.
versa. It's simple
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's you hear about people doing the work. That's the work, my friend.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the work. It is the consistent showing up for yourself. It's the consistent walking through that process or whatever works for you, right? This is just one modality that you could integrate or give a try. If something else hasn't been working, try it, right? I literally use it every day. I teach
Yeah.
it every single day. I've seen what it can do for people, and it's mind-blowing when you truly do get out of your own way. The way that you can level up your life is absolutely limitless. But you have to be willing to show up for yourself first, because no one is coming to level up your shit for you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I completely agree. Sorry, I'm writing that down because I'm like, ooh, that was good. I'm gonna go back and I'm like, what time was this? What's the time stamp on this? I'm gonna go back and write that down. Oh, that's so true. And all of these things, just does everything that we've been talking about today just designed to help people live better lives. If you're listening to this and you're like, nope, my life's just exactly how I want it. Okay, cool, good for you.
That's amazing.
Maybe go write a book on how you did that, but we all would be curious. But I like that you say that you use it every single day because there's no one person that has all this figured out and is just living, life on that proverbial mountaintop, like, just oming their way through everything and life's great. I think we're going to have struggles and challenges until the day we die, no matter how much we've quote unquote figured out. But I think that there's so much power that can be put back on our own selves in directing that life to go in the direction that we want. And I just love these tips that you've shared today. Now, I do have one final question for you, and this is the question that I ask everybody, and that is, what is one thing you wish everyone would do in regards to their own well-being?
Mm. I like to just sit with this for a second, if that's okay. I'm very intuitive, so I like to intuitively answer questions like this. And the answer that's coming up today to share is that I wish that everyone would trust themselves, even if it's just a little bit more. There's always going to be times and situations where you question yourself, especially when it's time to make a big move or a shift, or something is changing in your world, or it involves other people, right? I'm not saying to just like flip over tables and throw up middle fingers. I'm suggesting that you have that little voice or that little nudge or that little intuitive hit, that feeling that you get. And my wish is that everyone believes that a little bit sooner, so that they can experience how incredibly amazing their life actually could be.
I love that. I love that answer. Hear to that. Well, Laura, thank you so much for being on the show today. If people are interested in working with you or following you or just knowing a little bit more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, so I'd love to share a free resource, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So that process that I was talking about earlier, the power back process, I found that it's so foundational that it's literally what I teach everybody as they come into my world. And so I built a free 5-day podcast that you can listen to. They're 20-minute episodes, very quick and very easy, that we go through that process. And it's called The Foundations for Getting Out of Your Own Way. And it walks you through that in depth. There's an awesome little worksheet that goes with each day, so it helps you really get introspective. So I would invite you to hop into that, process, because and you can listen to it over and over again. So lauraora.com/foundations is where you can find that. That's also going to lead you onto my website, where you can find, more about my programs. I have a community called the Gutsy Collective, where if you're looking for that support, the accountability, guidance, that motivation, that's an incredible place and resource. And then on social, I play the most on Facebook and TikTok, and you can find me at that Laura Ora.
Very cool. Well, I will be sure to put some links in the comments below so people can just find you easily with the click of a button. And Laura, thanks so much again for being on the show today. And everybody else that's listening, I hope that you're having a fantastic day, and I will catch you on the next one.